I'd like to share some thoughts on a spin theory of emotions. And to begin, I'm going to refer to this ubiquitous pattern of sustainable progress that appears as the growth of a seed into a flower. So we have a seed that becomes a flower. There are three distinct phases in this growth. There's a seed stage, which is representative of the status quo of wanting to maintain existing boundaries. I'll refer to this as the physical phase. We have a second phase of assertiveness when the seed begins to germinate and a root and a stalk structure are created that can become very assertive and even aggressive. I'll refer to that as the vital. And then in many circumstances, given the right conditions, a flower can emerge, which is representative of the intent that was inherent in the seed, and I'll refer to that as the mental. Now, this is a pattern of ubiquitous sustainable progress. We find it in a lot of different organizations and systems. It's something that occurs through time, and as I've shared before, this very same movement can appear as a tightly bonded structure in space in which the three components form the bonds, if you will, of this tightly bonded structure. When we look at the emotional space, I've discussed before that there are two kinds of movements that may occur. One, I'll refer to that as the route of stillness, the second, the route of motion. And specifically, I've explored the route of stillness before, where you have this tightly bonded structure. The vital component brings awareness of a certain feeling that's pointing to a dysfunction within us. And this may be feelings like anxiety, anger, fear, depression. So common feelings that affect most of us at some point or the other. But the point is that it's drawing attention to this tightly bonded structure that exists within us. And then the mental component is the driver or the thought that's actually creating this reality. And then this reality exists somewhere within our body. And the way that we can begin to deconstruct this tightly bonded structure is only by becoming aware of it and becoming still so that deconstruction can occur. Now, this is, if you will, a rarer path, or a path that may occur after a fair amount of pain has been experienced. But the common path is one in which this tightly bonded structure increases its activity. So for instance, what's happening here is that we have this structure, and rather than becoming aware of the three components, there's a rapid activity, if you will, so that this tightly bonded structure, with its inherent feeling, driver, and its existence somewhere within our body, begins to spin, and as a result of the spin, it creates a field. So we may refer to this field as existing within a polarity, a positive-negative polarity. And as with any kind of field, if there's a polarity, it begins to attract similar spinning structures, so tightly bonded emotional structures. And so what we find is that within a normal individual or the average individual, we have many of these structures that are spinning, and they form a kind of a vaster field. And similarly on this side, there would be, so there's kind of an attraction of various kinds of tightly spinning structures, and there's a repulsion to other kinds of tightly spinning structures. So there's a field here that's also composed of similar structures that are repelled to our existing or to an existing framework that's emerging within us. And the net of this is that there is, if you will, a kind of a bubble that we exist in which there's a positive and there's a negative, which really represents our, say, likes and dislikes, or things that we are attracted to and repelled from. And then this spinning structure, or this bubble that we exist in, similarly attracts certain circumstances to us and creates for us a certain bubbled reality, if you will. And this will continue until such point as something almost catastrophic happens within our personal life, in which case we may begin a backward journey, or we may begin to retrace and go back through all this motion. So in a way, in a certain sense, like slowing the spin, if you will, that had created all this bubble structure that then determines how we perceive ourselves in the world. And it's only when we slow down and then go back towards this path of stillness that we have the opportunity to deconstruct these bubbles and begin to go down a path in which something other than these tightly bonded structures that may be consisting of anxiety, anger, fear, depression, and other derivatives or relatives of these emotions, and something else emerge in its place.